Peace, peace, people. Welcome to Empowerment Unveiled by MLJ. I'm your host, Monisha Holly Cherry, and today we have the beautiful Miss Sarah Edwards here with us. Hi,
Thank
Sarah.
you.
How
Hello.
are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you for being here with us today. So I've done a little bit of research, but I would like for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself, for myself and for the audience.
Absolutely. So I'm Sarah. I am someone who lives in Connecticut, New England, here in the United States, and I am a creative success coach, which is a really cool and fun way of saying that I get to work with mostly women, but anybody worldwide, digitally, helping them launch their businesses, set up their creative practice, really take a holistic approach in their life, especially if they're dealing with things like neurodivergence, mental health disorders, or physical disabilities, which is my own story, and that's how I got started in helping others. So that's what I do full time. I'm also an artist as well, hence the creativity part, and a professional art director working in really, really big agencies everywhere. So needless to say, I'm caffeinated and always on and ready to go.
For sure. What type of art do you do?
It varies. In my art director job, it's very heavy in the graphic design, shooting commercials and music videos and things like that. And then more tactilely, as just an artist in my own business, a lot of oil painting, watercolor, sometimes some digital Procreate art as well. So it definitely is all over the place, but we keep the branding tight and together, so that definitely always works out.
Cool. That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
So can you share more of your journey and what led you to start the Set Apart company and how it aligns with your personal story?
Absolutely. So I actually was born, not to bring it all the way back to the start, but I have to because it's a huge part of my story. I was actually born 3 months early. So I actually have minor cerebral palsy and I'm partially paralyzed on the left side. I also have vocal cord deficiency, and I started my whole life journey in special education. So I couldn't read, I couldn't write. A lot of the fundamental things I was really, really slow to learn and get at. And I had to work excruciatingly hard just to stay average and keep up. I was told I probably wouldn't graduate high school. And I worked so hard that I ended up graduating a year early with honors and awards and achievements because I stayed up till 2 a.m. I worked every single lunch since 4th grade. And in that process, actually what created my company by default is I was kind of the bridge between people with really severe handicaps and then the average student. So they would actually pull me into the hallway, into private rooms, and I would start teaching kids and start helping them. And I started developing this teaching coaching skill really, really early. Fell in love with it. It's my favorite thing. Sorry if I have to clear my throat. I apologize. I know it's annoying for editing. Getting over a cold. And I just started developing the skill of really watching people go through a transformation, but also more importantly, how do you translate information differently? How do you find another way forward for other people? And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was also dealing with severe obsessive compulsive disorder. So things like panicking if a candle was lit, checking an oven 17 times, worrying that something would happen to my family. And it really was pretty torturous. I would get dragged out of class with panic attacks. I would have blackouts. I would be throwing up every morning for 18 years. And I was misdiagnosed repeatedly. So what kind of led together was this merging of someone who's really high achieving and overcompromising themselves, but then really heading towards a train wreck of a mental crash, which is what started the company. I had a really bad breakdown in 2019 and started to come up with a plan to take my life. Found Jesus in the process, got the help I needed, got the proper diagnosis, and now I've been able to help a lot of different neurodivergent people get professional and correct diagnoses, and then also merge that with just my creativity and my business skills. So the long version, but the fast at the same time. Hopefully that all made sense.
Yes, for sure. Your story is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
And I thank God that you're here with us today because, yes, you have been through a lot. And I love that you were able to turn it into something so positive for other people as well. That is really amazing. Look, I'm already trying to hold back tears because I'm a very emotional person. So if I cry, like, that's just who I am. Like, but your story is very touching. Yes, for sure. Definitely. And no judgment at all. That's what we thrive on here. Like, that's the goal, to have a safe space for women to come to talk about their stories.
Awesome.
And to be able to help other people, like, in that, like, because people need to hear this type of stuff. You'll be surprised how many people are actually, like, dealing with some of the same things, like, or even if their story is different, like how your story can impact them. So I love it. Like, I love that you are vulnerable with us right now, and it's touching my heartstrings.
Oh, thank you. No, I love that you mentioned that, because it was somebody sharing their story in an article that I read at 3 a.m. about, in my case, intrusive thoughts. And if I had not found that article, I wouldn't be here. So I believe in the power of stories. It's the best.
For sure, for sure. What inspired you to embrace, like, your vulnerability? I cannot say that word. Your vulnerability.
Yeah.
And how has that shaped your growth, like, personally and professionally?
Yeah, I think vulnerability is such an interesting word, because it's really taken a new form with social media and the vulnerability between intimate spaces, safe spaces, but also publicly. And the interesting part is, I have found when teaching people how to think about things in a new way, what that actually translated to ultimately is working within your limitations. So many of us are not working within our limitations. And to work within your limitations, you have to be really vulnerable with yourself first. But it also requires me, as an advocate, as a coach, as a friend, as a wife, all the things, to be vulnerable first, to demonstrate how addressing our vulnerability gives us awareness. And then we can come up with a plan and an action plan and a life practice to work within our limitations. So I've just seen really the most amazing transformations in people through the lens of vulnerability. It's definitely one of the key words.
Okay, when you say work within your limitations, can you explain, like, more or elaborate more on that, and how, like, that applies to you as well?
Absolutely. So for example, maybe a client comes to me and they're like, I'm so burned out, I'm a failure, I'm not achieving what I want to achieve, or, I'm not taking care of myself, I feel scattered, right? So these are what we call surface level symptoms, but there's actually always a root cause. And usually the root cause is somebody isn't really building a life or creative practice or mental practice to tailor their own personalized specific design. So as a neurodivergent, the reason the word neurodivergent comes into play is because I don't have a neurotypical way of processing information and processing the world. So back in my story, I would have to take, assignments, take material and reconfigure it and break it down in a way that I understood. And that's an example of working within your limitation, because most of us would fight the urge and we'd be like, pushing ourselves to learn exactly how everybody else learns, or trying to overextend ourselves, overcompensate, when actually if we just reconfigure the pieces to what we need, we can have immense success. And that also includes boundaries. So I see it a lot with parents, with moms. I work with them too. And their life is different after you have a child, or after you get married, or after you move to a new location, whatever that is. And we want to find a way to adjust your practice and to accommodate yourself and not compare yourself to somebody else's way of working.
All right. So would you consider, like, depression or anxiety to be part of, like, neurodivergence as well?
So neurodivergence is an interesting word. It's not yet a complete medical term in the medical dictionary. It usually focuses on a variety of different disorders, such as OCD, autism, Tourette's, dyslexia are the main ones. I wouldn't say that depression and anxiety fall within neurodivergence, but obviously, absolutely, it falls within mental health. And OCD is a compound of an anxiety-based condition. So they all are really attached. And really, I think we all can agree, is anyone really neurotypical at the end of the day, especially when you're pulling in all those external factors, all those things that make us really unique. And really, we all have to walk through suffering, right? So, what is your form of suffering and how are you coping with it?
For sure. So, how has being neurodivergent like shaped your creative process and your perspective on like empowerment?
Wow, yeah. It's such a beautiful thing because I've gotten to meet other people walking with different disorders and just different, even non-diagnosed conditions. And the ability as a neurodivergent person to get in real-time reactions. Like, for example, I get easily overstimulated. Certain noises bother me. Certain sensory stuff bothers me. And as a child, I used to like hide in dark closets, like as a baby. So my body then was like signaling, hey, like, this is a different reaction for you. You know, when that happened, I'd be called a freak or weird or, you know, baby or not strong or introverted or all these bad things. But being neurodivergent now, understanding and really agreeing that my brain is different has given me the tools to take some of my confidence back. It has allowed me to better understand my mind so I can really let go of limiting beliefs. I can build that confidence back up because now I'm not putting myself in a box. And so neurodivergence is really the act of how does your brain function and how does your personality work? And so I can apply those skills like working within your limitations, breaking things down in new ways for anybody, even if they're not neurodivergent. And it's been such a beautiful, amazing honor to witness people doing that holistically in their lives, not just with working in productivity and creativity and entrepreneurship, but also in relationships, in marriages, in parenting, in finances. I've seen it all shift, and it's just awesome.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is like you took all of the negatives from your childhood and kind of like reshaped them in order to help other people who were going through sort of the same type of thing that you were experiencing then.
Exactly. And I really believe that you are not what's happened to you. And that's something I've had to repeat to myself every single day.
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to write that one down.
It's a sticky note.
Not what has happened to you. Yes, for sure. I need to put that right on the mirror.
I love
it. So what challenges have you faced as a neurodivergent entrepreneur?
Wow. Well, it varies for each neurodivergent, but for me in particular, I have such a damaged nervous system, completely shredded to bits and pieces. And when I get very excited about a project or, you know, I'm saying yes to lots of things because I get excited quickly, sometimes as a neurodivergent, I get very honed in, dialed in on a thing, and I'll spend 10, 20 hours on it, completely demolishing my boundaries, you know, overcompensating, overworking myself. So I've really had to practice setting really hard boundaries in place, even small, stupid ones, if you will. Like, I know when I don't get 8 hours of sleep, my OCD is a lot worse the next day. So I have to sleep 8 hours. And these are the small micro shifts that seem kind of dumb when we're talking about business, but these are actually the needle movers that can increase our productivity, but also make us enjoy the journey more, because entrepreneurship for everybody is literally never ending. And the second we realize that the goalpost is moving, we're like, okay, I have to pull this back in. Like, I cannot keep living like this. And there's exceptions, there's small little exceptions, but I really want people to enjoy the journey, which can be hard amidst suffering and just overstimulation and all those things.
For sure. I know that you mentioned that you also apply like these ideas to like family as well, like in relationships. Can you talk more about that? Like, how do you, I guess, maneuver like around like or in relationships and family, like being neurodivergent? Ugh, I can't get my words out.
I know, it's a tricky word. It's a big word. Well, interestingly, when I had gone through the lowest point of my OCD, I was in intensive treatment. And like, long story short, COVID had hit around that time, as we all are aware. And I accidentally stumbled into what is now my marriage. I met my husband kind of by accident. I was really angry about it. I was like, this was not in the vision binder. I don't have time for this. I'm trying to heal myself. What do you mean there's a boy now? I was very upset. Okay, it was not in the cards. But what was really crazy is going through an intensive healing process, learning about my mind, learning about how to function, and then also building a brand new relationship. I can't say this to all clients, but in my case, we're both Christians, and we bring our spirituality very heavily into our relationship, and that just softens the edges. It gives us guidance. But taking spirituality out of it for anyone listening, I would say that as a neurodivergent, it's crucial to learn how to communicate. And whatever that means for you. I've had clients who are in marriages or in relationships who have ADHD or autism or dyslexia or any of those things, and communication tends to be the first thing that gets grenaded. So what's interesting is, even though I help people with their businesses and I help them, coexist with these emotions and their mental health, when we start talking about life and roadblocks and barriers, you better believe that relationships, money, all those other things come up. And we actually start working on, how do you communicate? How do you build that into your process? How do you set boundaries? And how do you ask for help? And I just find people with trauma, we have such a hard time asking for help because we feel like a burden. And learning the art form of that, plus the art form of grieving well, grieving with your relationship, your partner, your spouse well, so you can navigate failures, losses, and situations in business, in entrepreneurship, in life, is the astronomical shift I think anybody needs, especially neurodivergent people, personally.
For sure. I love that. So women often feel like nobody is supporting their journey. How does your family respond to you, I guess, when you're having a challenging day?
Oh yeah, this is a big topic. And because I work with lots of women, it's so interesting because we're all in different seasons of life, right? I've worked with people who are fresh out of college and people who are empty nesters at 65 trying to find their identity again. So there's this really big span. And the most interesting part I'm finding are people in those newer relationships, marriages, and then young children. This is when things get real spicy and interesting. And I have found that there's a role dynamic that happens. So in my case, even though I have a corporate job that I work and I run my business, there's still this kind of expectation that I handle and mitigate certain household tasks. And I think that there's a design to that, and there's a beauty to what we're naturally good at. For example, I'm really good at cooking. I'm just going to plug my brag in here. But this all comes back to communication with, how do you learn the art form of delegation? And as an entrepreneur, I think, and really as women, I think we believe that delegation only comes to us when we reach a certain point in our career, a certain financial moment, we're building a team, or our spouse and our marriages reach a certain age, whatever that belief factor we've built in. But delegation can actually start when you are on your own, when you're fresh in marriage, when you don't have a team, with kids or without kids. So really, what does delegation look like? And how do you honor and make space for your dreams and your goals and your body? And this also comes back to understanding your design and how you work, such as your mind, your mental health. Like I said, going back to my example, I need 8 hours of sleep. It's a non-negotiable. So my spouse, non-negotiably, has to help support that 8 hours. So if there's something that goes off the rails, you better believe he's stepping in so I get my 8 hours of sleep. And it really just makes a better dynamic for everybody, and vice versa. We do it for each other. So understanding how you work and your needs and how you operate, and then getting better at communication is literally the key to happiness. Like, my marriage is the easiest part of my life. Everything else is chaos, but he's my best friend. So I want everybody to have that feeling. And I've watched clients go through that transformation, and I literally cry just thinking about it because I've seen the shifts, and it's awesome.
Yeah. For sure. I love that. I love that you have such a supportive partner, because people do not realize that it's so important to have someone that can literally help you maneuver through all of this. Like, honestly, like, my husband is behind the scenes of this. Like, if I didn't have him, I wouldn't be able to do this right now.
It makes me so happy. So, I love that.
Yes, I completely understand. Like, and I love that. And speaking about that, like, we often call each other like our teammates, even though we're husband and wife. Like, and I know you talk a lot about teamwork. Like, can you explain to our audience like how teamwork plays such a big factor in like your everyday life?
Yes.
and in anybody's life, especially for people who are entrepreneurs and for people who are neurospicy, as I like to call it.
I love that. I love that so much. Absolutely. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. And one of the things I like to always bring to the table, an analogy, is when we think of team, we often think of game day. We think of like the big moment in front of the stadium, the things that we associate with team commonly being sports or high intensity moments. But I like to reverse that team is actually all that work behind the scenes that gets you to that stadium. The only reason that they're at that stadium is because of all the work that we will never be privileged enough to see. So if that's actually how you want to operate your team, is behind the scenes, not to go off the analogy with your husband here, literally behind the scenes, but what does that actually look like in a day-to-day perspective? Because it's not just when you have your big entrepreneurship moments, your big project. It is also waking up at a certain time, cooking the meals, grocery shopping. And I think a really key aspect is any possible thing, we have a transparent marriage. It means there's literally nothing held back. There is 100% honesty. There are no secrets. And we bring every single problem, no matter how big or small, to each other. And the team aspect is, how do we come together and utilize both of our strengths and acknowledge our weaknesses to support each other? Sometimes it's just listening, but oftentimes it's cross-contaminating our skill sets. You know, my husband is this amazing extrovert, amazing with kids. He's a fourth grade teacher, for context. I am not an extrovert. I am an introvert. So that's a great example of like, how do we balance each other out? And the small stuff like grocery shopping, like figuring out, hey, I have this podcast recording. Can you handle this thing while I do this? That is what's going to get you to success. It's those really, really micro shifts. And that's when we lean into systems, right? That's when we come up with plans, kind of some set roles, like I am the cook, but he's definitely the dishwasher. So small stuff like that seems really inconsequential is actually key in having that fully transparent relationship with anybody, family, friends, or otherwise.
I love how you, like, the way you describe it, it makes it seem like it's so seamless. But like from my experience, I know that it's not always that seamless. Like it took us years. We've been married for 7 years. It took us years to like get to the point where it was seamless. So can you give some advice on how to get to that point for a lot of like couples or teams out there?
Oh, yeah. And we've had those moments. And I find that there's always a couple buckets and everybody's a little different. For some people, it's finances, it's parenting, it's like relational friendships or old habits, right? And something that was really powerful for us is in the area you're most in pain. Let's say it's parenting, let's say it's finances, whatever that is. What is your shared vision of the best possible reality that could be what you guys both become in that bucket in particular? So for us, we really struggled with finances. It could have completely obliterated our relationship. And when we recognized that that was a huge problem, we also recognized we're both collectively undereducated in this topic. And we both have bad history, trauma, things we're bringing to the table that we both individually need to take responsibility for and say, yeah, this is something I need to work on. But let's find a space to do it together. So for us, we went out and we got coaching, we got new books, audiobooks, material, and we studied up hard. And we had these like weekly sessions where we would sit down and like, what did you learn? Hey, let's make these adjustments. And now we actually apply that technique to like everything. We're not parents yet. I'm hoping in the very near future that we will be, but I imagine we'll take that same technique if we can with learning new things and stepping into new seasons. So, whatever area is the pain point in your relationship that you're just finding is creating so much turmoil, I just want people to know that you don't have to accept that as your reality. And that isn't the final story and narrative of your relationship and your marriage. And if I can come back from some serious dumb financial mistakes, like that's a whole nother podcast. I have made the worst mistakes you can think of. If I can come back from that and now have some of the best financial record with my spouse and we're on the path to be wealthy and in our own, definition of wealthy, anybody can do anything. I really believe that. So step one is just accepting that your reality isn't permanent and like you don't have to accept this. Like write a new story and do it with your partner.
I love that. Write a new story for sure. Like that one is gonna stick with me.
Yeah, sticky notes. I'm telling you, I got all kinds of ones on my desk.
Yes, for sure. So in your podcast, you have openly like shared personal stories. Was there a specific moment that helped you start being vulnerable with your audience?
Ooh, I've gotten this question a lot. I think I've always been a little unapologetically filterless. Don't know if it's always served me well. So I always had this natural tendency. But actually, I would say my moment is what a lot of people don't know about me, and I'll say it here. I have a really hard time nurturing long-term relationships. Part of it is the OCD neurodivergence. Part of it is everything, and part of it is choice. And I have been on this warpath of like, I want to connect with people and I want every interaction to be an absolute exchange where a shift forms between somebody else, if I can do that. And vulnerability and sharing my story has been the key that unlocks that reality and really stepping into that version of myself that I want to become. So I think a big piece of it is deciding that you want to connect with other people. And when you're looking at your business or your brand, if you're trying to start a podcast or a newsletter, your authenticity, your story is literally the key to propelling all of your goals forward because people crave that connection. And I think we live in such an isolated, disconnected space. I think now more than ever, it's actually getting scary despite all the technology. So understanding that your authenticity can create transformation for people is huge. And a real-time example that I've seen that has just brought me to my knees, like over and over again, with my OCD story, when I would start telling it in really unconventional places, like in the workplace, and people are like, what are you doing? Like, what? We shouldn't talk. Is that going to go to HR? And I'm like, I don't even care. I'm going to tell you guys I have intrusive thoughts. And I helped 4 people get OCD treatment, life-saving treatment, because I just happened to be bold and talk to people and sit down with them and be like, hey, do you need a conversation right now? And once I saw that happen, I gotta say, there is nothing better. Like, there's absolutely nothing better than watching your vulnerability literally be a shift for somebody and potentially be life-altering. I hope that's a good enough motivation for somebody listening, but I'm telling you, it's the thing. It's the best.
I love that so much, and you're so right. Like I said before, like you never know who's watching or who needs to hear whatever it is that you have to say. And I commend you because as an introvert myself, I am more of the maybe I shouldn't say anything type of person, but I'm aiming to be more like you and actually speaking out on the things that I'm going through in order to help someone else as well. So I love that, and I really commend you for that because that's not easy especially if you're an introvert.
No, there's all this holding us back. But what's super cool, like a shift that I had, I think this year especially, is do not underestimate what you know. We're so quick, I think especially as women, but in people as general, oh, that's common knowledge, or that's already been said, or I've seen 10 influencers talk about that, but nobody's talked about it like you have. And it's amazing how when you start telling people stuff, oh, hey, this is the fix, or hey, this is what I did, and they're like, whoa, I've never heard that before. We like constantly underestimate ourselves. Like, it's crazy. So never, that's a good inner work thing to do. It's like, what do I know that I can teach people? How can I help people? And aligning your mission and your offers and your goals to do that is a really great first step.
For sure. Speaking of mention, I have a small business, a brand called Marley J, and in that brand, we're running a campaign right now. I'm actually wearing the shirt called Let Women Choose. And so I really would like to get your perspective on like how your audience of women like responds to what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a great question. I typically see the most of this in my one-on-one work because it's such an intimate space, just like this conversation. But I've also seen it with my students who take my classes, people in my membership community. So there's different variances of me having a perspective here. But I will say that there is always resistance, Always. There's this natural, like, again, the limiting scripts that are holding us in that we believe about ourselves that kind of click in first. And there's this really interesting moment when women in particular, we have to really understand how the comfort zone works. So the reason your comfort zone is comfortable is because your brain has gathered evidence, data, and information that you are safe in this comfort zone. If you want to step outside of your comfort zone, well, the reason that's so difficult and there's so much resistance with whatever change or advice I give or anybody gives is because you lack evidence on your safety and success outside of your comfort zone. So you've got to build up that evidence. Well, how do we do that, right? If you're starting that starting line is you talking bad to yourself and saying, in the past you failed, or I'm not capable, or this person said this about me, you're not being the best person to help stretch out your evidence to get out of that comfort zone. So for me, what I always have women do in particular is confidence and clarity comes through action, always. What's that first little step that we can take? So as a coach, it's really important for me to always make sure my clients have that actionable first step. It's a non-negotiable. And that kind of helps them start the movement. And it's amazing. When that ball just tilts a little bit, they're like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I can do this. Because they're seeing that evidence expand and they're getting into the fear zone, but they're sprinting through it. And a really big part of doing that successfully is understanding the identity-based outcome, the version of themselves that they want to become, which is way more potent than goals. So if you came to me and you're like, Sarah, I want to launch a newsletter, but I've never been able to do it. I hate it. I'm not going to do it. Awesome. Like, let's get clear on why do you want to launch a newsletter? Like, why this is actually for you and what is it actually going to do to serve you, right? We build up that momentum. We get clarity. That's how we find that first step. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I can see myself working there. It's happening. I think women need that extra visual, emotional emphasis and connection. And just as somebody to sit there and be like, no, I've got you. Like, we're going to do this together. And the relief I see on women's faces, the I got you relief, is crazy. And I don't see it as much with my male clients. And I don't want to make assumptions, but I think women were more emotionally in tune. We kind of need that verbal reassurance too.
So I wanted to talk more about like your company, Set Apart company. So what role does empowerment play in the foundation and mission of the Set Apart company?
Well, the name being Set Apart kind of plays a role automatically there. But I really want people to know that their authentic selves and their story really, really, really matters. And nobody can tell your story but you. So once you kind of tapped into that understanding, it's applicable everywhere. It's applicable in your day-to-day life. It's applicable in your goals, in your business, whatever you want to build. And I really believe that success is inevitable for anybody who chooses to decide that it is inevitable for them. So if you have a dream of being a best-selling author, of being an actress, of being a world-class painter, of selling, 10,000 prints, of being the next best podcast, your success is absolutely inevitable if you choose to invest in yourself, to decide and choose yourself every day. And also, I think the biggest lesson, ironically, through empowerment is the power to look at failure in a completely new way, that it's just feedback, it's data, it's information. There is no true failure unless you quit. So my whole goal as a teacher, as a coach, as an influencer, whatever we want to call it today, is to show people that, hey, even when it gets hard, even in the suffering, even when you're not sure how your story is going to fold out, if you're choosing to take all steps of all kinds, failure or not, as data and information about your success, you're going to fly to the moon. It's going to be amazing. So my goal is to make everyone feel that way. And even when they're really scared and they're about to take that new leap into something they've never done before, it's the best part of my day. It's the best part of my job. And that's kind of the whole encompassment of what I try to do with everybody that I work with.
Okay. I love that. So what has been the most rewarding moment for you since starting the Set Apart company?
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I could pick one. Oh wow. Hold on. I gotta take a moment. There's been so many, really. I had a client who came to me literally like they felt like their life was completely over. And without giving too much detail away, because I want to respect their privacy and their story, but they were kind of later in life, empty nester, going through an identity crisis, but also dealing with a lot of unchecked mental health, trauma, relational issues. And they came to me just like, I desperately need help. And they didn't have money. And I said, can I call you back in 30 minutes? I shut my computer. I ran to my husband. I gave him the look. And he knows the look. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just need you to say yes to me in this moment. Okay. Questions asked. He said yes. Ran back, opened my computer and said, I want to work with you pro bono. And it wasn't the pro bono thing that was the best moment. It was watching somebody feel like they were seen the way that they needed to be seen in that moment, but rewarded for their vulnerability of asking for help. And to watch their transformation and get on a better path and work through that trauma and build their business and find their authenticity, find their branding, all the other logistical business stuff involved was really beautiful because they decided to take that chance to reach out. And I have to say, regardless of, what type of experience you're looking for with myself, with anybody, just that step of reaching out and finding your person that you're fully aligned with to say yes to and work with is incredible and beautiful. And I still think of that moment. I still think of that ability of like, I have enough information and experience to help guide someone through this. Like, I could care less about the money, truly. Like, the fact that I have enough built up where I can say yes and help this person is really rewarding, because I really saw 3, 4, 5, 6 years of my life that I thought wasn't working, that I thought was a waste, that I thought I was failing, accumulate together into a moment of like, wow, I've built this amazing thing. I didn't even know it. I was so blind to it until that moment. So that's definitely one of the top tier moments. Yeah.
I love that. That shows like you really care about like what you're doing and what you're like offering to your audience and to the world. Like, and that's amazing. That's really beautiful. I speaking of that as well, I also saw that you have some messages like in your, I think, apparel, I want to say, like, be the act of kindness.
Yes.
How do you decide on what messages to focus on, and why are they meaningful to you?
A lot of it drives from the mental health story. So a lot of it just is naturally ingrained in me and what I've learned over the years, what I've learned through lots of therapy, lots of treatment myself. But I think just like a good brand, just like a great business, something that's quick hitting, that in that moment kind of catches people and makes them think differently. My whole mission is like, there's always another way forward. There's always another way to think about something. How do we redefine? How do we reframe? So when I'm thinking about messaging, whether it's a post on Instagram or on a t-shirt, how do I quickly shift people's brains in a second to think about something in a new way that could have a butterfly effect? And that's kind of like, sounds like a really high bar, but when you derive it from your own experiences and you think about what is some stuff that I've been through, what are some things I've learned, you have so many hidden gems in your story of new quotes, information, great captions, whatever you want to call it, is all there already in your experience. And so the more I dig into that, I journal, the more that I like talk about it with a therapist, these new ideas come up. And just a little quick tip for my entrepreneur creative friends listening, but have a space where you get those quick thoughts, write them down. Have a tab always open, a notebook, a trusty notebook, and when you have those ideas, put them on paper, because you just never know what's going to happen with them later on.
For sure. I love that so much. And I love that you even have these messages like within your business, because it just like brings it all full circle. And we know that this is something you are truly passionate about. And also I want to say your smile is contagious. I keep finding myself smiling because I see you smiling, and it's beautiful.
My coworkers, my therapist, my husband, my nickname is Sunshine. Which I did not realize that I was that energetic, but my goal is for people to leave a time with me feeling a little more lifted, because the world is really hard. It's rough out there. It's not easy. So if I can make someone's day a little better, it makes my day.
I love your energy is so contagious.
Oh, good.
And it's beautiful. So we're going to go into some rapid fire questions. Have you ever
Love
done
it.
rapid fire?
A few times, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Do you want like one word,
Okay.
one sentence kind of quickers?
I guess one sentence is fine.
Okay. Everybody's different.
First thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like there aren't rules, just the first thought that comes to your head.
Okay.
Okay, so what is your personal mantra or favorite empowering quote?
There's always another way forward.
Ooh, I like that. What is one word that describes your brand?
Oh no. I keep saying sunshine because we were just talking about it. That feels a little biased, but I'll go with it.
Okay. If Set Apart Company had a theme song, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, this is the best question I've ever gotten. Hold on. Okay, so this is a quick answer, I promise, but I am constantly told I'm like a Barbie character because I bought this glittery cowboy hat. So Dance the Night Away from the Barbie movie would probably be like, I've made it, I've peaked. Just because I think it's fun and I love the analogy of your house burning down, but everything's fine, which is just like how I try to live life.
I love that so much. So what is your ideal day off?
Oh my gosh. Well, first, it's actually having a day off. Step one. Being an introvert, I just love takeout and hanging out with my best friend being my husband, watching a movie in our safe space. That's like the best. That's such an introvert answer, but I love it.
I love it. Same.
Yeah.
So what does success look like for you?
Ooh. Success for me is the ability to see all failure and feedback as success. So I don't really believe in having a bar. I just believe in constantly working forward and moving forward.
I love that. Okay, this is not a rapid fire question.
Okay.
So can you name 3 women that inspire you and why?
Actually, J.K. Rowling, for anyone not familiar with her story, she was rejected by literally every publisher under the sun, which resonates with me because I dream of being an author, but also because I was rejected from 10 colleges, all 10. So I just really relate to looking at someone really power through and they stuck to their story. Like, this is great. I know it's great. And literally like 100 rejects. Like, imagine that perseverance that you have to have and just the resilience. So she definitely comes to mind. I know this is corny, but I mean it, but my mom is my superhero. She took care of a very needy, handicapped, special needs child, being myself. And every good thing about myself is from her. The power of an amazing mom. Like, the world does not appreciate mothers enough. They are literally the next generation. They're the change makers. They're the bread and butter of society. So my mom was the first person I thought about.
I would like to share 2 of mine with you as well. I would definitely say my grandmother is one. She was just a boss. Like, again, like, people who watch me have probably heard this 1,000 times, but she was one of those people who you couldn't tell no, like, and make her like stop. Like, she was one of those people who had a lot of perseverance and a lot of patience and a lot of determination as well. So she really like inspired most of what I do within my business now. So she was probably my top one. And then another one would definitely be Tabitha Brown. I don't know if you've heard of her, but yes, Tabitha Brown, she inspired myself and a lot of other women I know. She started out as like a Lyft driver. And yeah, she was doing her thing, but it took a lot of, again, determination, perseverance. Like, she ended up blowing up from just being herself and being unapologetically herself and like sharing her story with people. And now she's in stores. Like, she has several different products. She's getting more into her acting career. She's just an all around like boss, and I love her. Yeah, she's everywhere. So those are my top two. And yeah, so those are definitely the two women that are my biggest like idols at the moment. So what is one thing that you hope listeners can take away from this conversation that we've had today?
Not to repeat myself or anything, but you are not what has happened to you. You are the author of your story, and you really, really do have everything you need right now to decide what you want to become and what you do next. You don't need another course. You don't need another degree. You don't need another conversation. You literally have everything you need to make that thing a reality and to get to work and be excited about that version of yourself you want to become.
I love that. And thank you for that, because I needed to hear that as well.
Anytime I'm here, I love it.
For sure. Thank you so much for taking the time out to have this conversation with us today. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I took away a lot from this conversation, and I hope my audience does the same, which I'm sure they will, because your story is amazing. Very heartfelt. It pulled all types of heartstrings for me today.
Awesome.
But overall, like, I really did enjoy this, and I wish you the best in your life, your company, your marriage, and all of the above. And for the audience, if you have any other questions that you'd like for us to address, especially in the, what is it? Why am I drawing blanks right now?
Oh no, we passed the spirit stick of blanks. I'm sorry.
I know. I drew a blank. Okay. So for my audience, if you have any other questions that you like to address as far as creativity and neurodiversity goes, please drop them in the comments. I'm sure Miss Sarah and I will also be elated to address those questions. And also, Sarah, can you tell our audience where they can find you, like your socials and all of that?
Yes, I am pretty much only on Instagram and Instagram threads. That's my home base at setapart_company. And I am always available. I'm the only one that checks my emails and my DMs. So please always feel free and safe to reach out and start a conversation.
Cool. Thank you so much again. And honestly, I will be in touch with you shortly after this. But again, I know I've said thank you 1,000 times, but I am so appreciative of this conversation today for sure.
I'm glad. That makes me so happy. I really, thanks for reaching out and reaching out for people. And thank you for being flexible with the timing. Oh my gosh. It means a lot.
Sure. Peace out, people. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. And we'll see you next time. Peace.